I never imagined I would wake up to find my estranged husband beside me. After 3 years my heart raced as I blinked into the dim light. The room felt heavy, thick with silence, like a blanket wrapped too tightly around my chest. I squinted, half expecting to find him gone, like a bad dream, but there he was, sleeping, unruly curls framing a face I once knew so well. Memories crashed in like waves. We had fought like wildfire. The arguments, the cold shoulders, the way he walked out without looking back. I swear, some nights I could hear the echoes of our shattered promises. Now, there he was, breathing softly beside me, and a lump formed in my throat. How had he gotten here? The door was locked. I had changed the locks. Why didn't I hear anything? I could smell the familiar scent of him, cinnamon and something else earthy, grounding. But this was wrong. The sunlight struggled to peek through the curtains, casting strange shadows that seemed to dance with secrets. I turned to face him, my hands trembling, heart thumping like a drum echoing in the stillness. I didn't want to wake him, didn't want to shatter this surreal moment. But then, why was he here? Where had he been? My mind raced through countless questions, and the room spun with possibilities. Was I being punished? Or had life brought us back together for a reason? Just then, he stirred, the edges of his lips twitching into a sleepy smile. My heart plummeted. What was this? And in that instant, I felt the universe all around us, the weight of 1,000 unsaid words. Could this be a second chance, or just a fleeting moment before the storm returned? Before I could catch my breath, his eyes fluttered open, and the warmth of recognition flooded over me, mixed with an icy dread. Would he remember? Would he tell the truth this time? Why now, after everything? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The morning light seeped into the room, casting a halo around him as if the universe wanted to highlight the man who had once been my everything. The warmth stirred conflicting emotions within me. I wanted to lean closer, to memorize his face again, but I was anchored by uncertainty, a heavy anchor of fear and resentment pulling me down. What are you doing here? I whispered, the words slipping out before I could filter my thoughts. He blinked, squinting against the light, a frown creasing his forehead. The moment felt suspended in time, the air thick with everything left unsaid. Can we talk? His voice was rough, like gravel beneath a soft blanket, and I clutched the sheets tighter to my chest, suddenly feeling vulnerable in this intimate space. Talk. After 3 years, you knock on my door in the dead of night, uninvited. My voice trembled with indignation. You think you can just waltz back in and everything will be fine? You left me. You chose to walk away. His eyes shifted, a flash of pain flaring beneath a layer of regret. I know I hurt you. I can't change the past, but I had to return. It's complicated. That's an understatement, I assenti it. I felt anger bubbling beneath the surface, but it was accompanied by something else, a sense of longing. You really think you can just explain away 3 years of silence? He took a deep breath, running a hand through his disheveled curls. I could see the struggle in him, the way his eyes coursed with memories, with sorrow. I'm not asking for your forgiveness, he said quietly. I just need you to listen. Why now? I demanded. He hesitated, a shadow crossing his face. Because I almost lost everything. I was lost. I didn't know how to come back, how to face you, until what? My voice softened, curiosity overtaking my anger. Until my sister called. She said she saw you at the grocery store. Alone. Looking different. My heart raced at the mention of my sister, appropriately protective of me, both burdened and concerned about my solitude. What did she say? She said you looked happy. It made me realize how long I'd buried my head in the sand. How much I wanted to fix things. Looking away, I wrestled with my own wish as our hopeful desire flickered beneath the pain, but I couldn't let it. I wouldn't be lured back in like a moth to a flame. Are you really here to fix things? Or is this just another illusion? I couldn't help the edge creeping into my tone. I can't promise anything, but I swear I'm here with the intention of being honest this time. He shifted on the bed, closing the gap between us, and I felt my resolve falter. Just then, my phone buzzed emphatically on the nightstand, breaking the tension. It was a text from my sister, unreadable but urgent. I didn't want to be distracted, but the looming anxiety twisted my gut. I reached for it, glancing at the screen, my breath hitching as the message flashed before my eyes. We need to talk. It's about Mom. I froze, a tidal wave of dread crashing over me. The world outside seemed to dim, all my anger, my bitterness, felt trivial in that moment. What do you mean? Is she okay? My voice shook as I focused on the screen. I don't know. Just please call me. The weight of the potential crisis began to overshadow everything else. I looked up at him, seeing the concern etched on his face. For a fleeting moment, our shared fear brought us closer. But the walls we built remained high, and I couldn't push down the walls surrounding my heart. Stay here. I didn't wait for him to respond before I hurried from the bed, grabbing my robe and slipping into the hallway. The impending doom settled heavier with each step. My mind swirled as I dialed my sister's number. The phone rang twice before her voice broke through, shaky and filled with a worry that instantly tangled itself around me. You need to come quick. It's not good. As panic surged through me, I glanced back toward the bedroom door, my heart a mixture of fear and unresolved tension. This was bigger than us. Life had thrown me a curveball, and as I stood there, the divide between past and present screamed louder. In that moment, the weight of uncertainty pressed heavily on my chest. Would I be able to face what was unfolding? Would I find the strength to confront the emotional battle ahead, not only with my own heart but with the ghosts of my mother's fading health? And then, just as my sister's voice plunged deeper into the unknown, I heard him call after me softly, as if reaching, as if wanting to bridge the chasm. Wait. Don't go yet. But I had to choose now. The unraveling threads of my family or the risk of opening the door to a relationship riddled with unresolved pain. Each word I hadn't spoken hung like a fragile ornament, waiting to break. I stood frozen at the crossroads of my uncertainty, my heart hammering against my ribcage as I grappled with the weight of my sister's words. The thought of my mother brought forth a storm of emotions I had stifled for far too long. The image of her frail figure, one I had avoided confronting, danced painfully at the edges of my mind. Please, he said, his voice drenched in a mixture of desperation and tenderness. The sound of it was almost foreign, yet it breathed life into the air that had grown thick around us. I need you to listen. I know this is sudden and everything is complicated, but you don't have to go through this alone. The unexpected kindness wrapped around my heart in a gentle embrace, but it also sent my defenses soaring. Did he truly mean that? Could I trust him to be present, or was this yet another chapter in a story filled with unfulfilled promises? I need to check on my mom, I replied, my voice barely a whisper, weighty with fear. I can't talk right now. He shifted again, the sheets rustling as he rose, and for a brief moment, I caught a glimpse of the man I had once adored, the man I had thought I lost. I understand. But he'll be here when you're ready. There was a sincerity lacing his words, a kind of gentle resolve that made me hesitate. I turned away from him, forcing myself to focus on the task ahead. I could hear my sister's worry echoing in my mind like a haunting refrain. As I slipped into my shoes, I felt his eyes on me, a mixture of concern and an unspoken plea for connection. The warmth from the bed was now a distant memory, the reality of my mother's precarious situation gnawing at my heart. I rushed through the hallway, each step echoing my turmoil. It was a familiar journey, one adorned with memories of laughter, love, but also of buried pain. The echoes of my childhood home were fraught, a cacophony of moments that had shaped me. A single glance at my phone confirmed my sister had already left. Might she have beaten me to it? Anxiety twisted within me like a coiled serpent. The drive felt eternal, each red light holding me captive to my thoughts. I replayed the conversations I'd had with my sister in my mind, Flashes of my mother's laughter now tinged with shadows I'd been trying to outpace. A beeping horn jolted me back to the present, startling me into reality, and I clenched the steering wheel harder, willing myself to push through. There was no room for hesitation. I had to make it there. As I arrived, I briskly parked the car and hurried toward the entrance, my heart pounding to an irregular rhythm. The fluorescent lights buzzed above, bathing everything in an unsettling glow, mirroring the unease knitted deep within my chest. When I reached the waiting room, I found my sister slumped over, her face a mask of worry, anxiety etched deeply in her features. "What happened?" I asked, breathless. "She's in with the doctor right now," my sister replied, voice trembling. "I don't know what to think. I feel like everything is spiraling." We exchanged a fraught look, the worry linking our hearts with invisible threads of fear. I wanted to comfort her, to assure her that everything would be okay, but my own dread was suffocating. Then I caught sight of a familiar face in the corner of my IDR. Lindell, the kind but firm face of my mother's physician. My heart dropped, realizing he had always been the bearer of both good and bad news. As he approached, a heavy silence ensued, wrapping around us like a fog. "I'm sorry to keep you waiting," he said gently, his gaze locking onto mine, his expression steadfast but soft. "There are a few things we need to discuss." Panic surged through me. Should we be worried?" I stammered, fear choking the words. He hesitated for a moment, searching our faces as if weighing the emotional currency of his words. "Your mother's condition is serious. We need to talk about treatment options, but I understand this is a lot to process." Each word felt like a dagger, twisting in my heart as I tried to comprehend the magnitude of it all. I glanced back toward the waiting area where my sister sat, her bravado crumbling as we faced the unknown of this charged moment together. That's when it happened. The door to the consultation room opened, and my mother stepped out. She looked different, paler, her smile strained but warm. But there was a frailness that shattered the last remnants of my resolve. My chest tightened as her eyes met mine, seeking reassurance. "Hey, sweetheart," she said, her voice weak but still laced with affection. "I'm glad you're here." In that fractured moment, all the anger I harbored at my husband for leaving, at myself for enduring, at my mother for falling melted away in the face of her love. I wanted to cry, to collapse into her arms, but instead, I stood paralyzed, overwhelmed not only by her presence but by the echoes of the past rushing back to me. Just as I stepped forward, feeling the gravity of my mother's presence like an anchor pulling me toward a turbulent sea, a soft hand grasped my shoulder. I turned to find my estranged husband standing at the threshold, his eyes filled with more depth than I had ever seen before. "Let's talk," he whispered, but I couldn't focus. My mother was here, and her health teetered on the brink. Questions swirled around my mind, and something in his eyes revealed a new layer of desperation, a plea that felt both foreign and familiar. Before I could react, my mother reached out, the warmth of her hand enveloping mine. "I'm so proud of you, honey. No matter what happens, we'll face it together." But as I caught my husband's gaze, something deeper flickered between us, a foreign bond that hinted at possibilities born from shared sorrow. I stood there, on the precipice of two worlds, teetering as the ground beneath me shifted again, leaving my heart in a breathless quandary. And then I heard ITA phone buzzing from my purse, indication of another storm brewing on the horizon, and I knew in an instant that the power of the past and present was about to collide once more, pulling me in every direction but never allowing me to settle where my heart truly belonged. The air in the hospital waiting room felt thick, suffocating almost, as I grappled with that unexpected presence of my husband. The shock of his arrival collided with the reality of my mother's condition, sending a cocktail of confusion and emotions surging through me. I squeezed my mother's hand tighter, desperate for the familiar comfort of her presence, as if trying to anchor myself in that moment. "Why are you here?" I managed to utter, the words catching in my throat. He took a hesitant step forward, torn between the pain of our shared past and the urgency of the present. "I found out about your mom. I couldn't just stay away," he replied, his voice laden with a sincerity I hadn't heard in years. "I'm so sorry for everything. I just needed to be here." His words hung in the air, heavy with meaning, yet my heart wrestled with uncertainty. How could he expect me to accept this peace offering? Each syllable felt like a fragile glass, prone to shatter if I dared to touch it. My mind flashed back to the vacant nights filled with loneliness and unanswered questions, to the times I had needed him most, and he had been absent, yet, in that moment, a flicker of something vulnerable lingered in his eyes that held me captive. I didn't know if it was the sheer vulnerability of our circumstances or the pity I felt for all we had lost, but the instinct to reach for the remnants of our once close bond surged within me. "You left," I whispered, feeling the air grow thick with emotions I wanted to bury deep. His expression shifted, pain shimmering in the depths of his gaze. "I know. It was a mistake. I wanted to be better, I wanted to be there for you. I just didn't know how." "Stop," I interrupted, my grip tightening on my mother's hand, needing her solid warmth to ground me. "This wasn't about us. This was about her. She needs us right now." Behind us, Dr. Lindell stood quietly, hands clasped in front of him, a watchful presence reminding us of our reality. "I know this is a challenging time," but he began, but I could hardly hear him over the rush of emotions swirling through my head. His focus shifted back to my mother, who had become increasingly lost in her thoughts. I sensed a weight heavy upon her heart. She needed clarity, and in that moment, a startling realization bloomed within me. I was terrified of losing the stronghold of my childhood, of losing the woman who had been the anchor in my life. "Mom," I turned to her, softening my tone as I tried to mask my own uncertainty. "What do you want us to do? What are you feeling?" Her gaze was thoughtful yet weary, a mist of pain clouding the vibrant spark of her youth. "I don't want to be a burden," she said, fragile and unsure, her voice trembling slightly as if it could break with a single breath. "But I don't want to fight this alone." The breakthrough moment, the tear in the fabric that had kept us apart for too long, brought tears to my eyes. I skimmed my hand across my husband's arm, a silent acknowledgement of our shared culpability. "We can do this together," I said, the truth of my words filling the air. Before she could respond, my phone buzzed aggressively in my pocket again, an intrusive reminder of the reality that awaited outside the hospital walls. I fished it out, anticipation coiling in the pit of my stomach. It was a message from our neighbor. The news was undulating, tantalizingly cruel about the events that had unfolded since ID left my home. "Your house," I murmured, the words barely escaping. "I need to answer this." In that instant, my mother locked eyes with me, a spark of urgency igniting deep within her gaze. "Don't let the world tear you apart. Not now. Not ever," she implored, each word hanging in the air as a twisted promise. However, I couldn't let this moment slip through my hands. My heart raced with the immediate clash of my responsibilities. When I glanced back at my phone, the screech of another buzz echoed through my mind, urging me to confront the reality of my fractured life. And as I pressed my thumb against the screen, my heart sank with the chilling truth of the message ID just opened. The community had rallied together in my absence, and the shocking news might change everything I thought I knew about my mother, about my husband, and about the choices I would make in the coming hours. "Something's wrong," I gasped, my voice barely above a whisper, but the reality was crystal clear. Each text brought a new cascading wave of emotion, and beneath it all lay the unrelenting question: could I really choose to put my family back together when there were secrets lurking in the shadows, waiting to fracture our already precarious bond? The fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting a sterile glow that felt both artificial and harsh against the reality I faced. I read the message again, my heart pounding as if calling out to me to pay attention. A community effort was underway, one I hadn't invited nor anticipated, and it carried the promise of deep-seated secrets and unforeseen connections that could easily unravel the fragile thread stitching us together. "Your mother," the text started, and in that moment, every word spun dread into my being. My pulse quickened. This wasn't just gossip or idle chatter, it felt like a lightning strike, illuminating the darkness surrounding my estranged family. What could they possibly be rallying for if the skies were not yet clear? "I need to know what it says." My husband's voice cut through the chaos swirling in my mind, a mixture of concern and something bordering on desperation. "No," I shook my head, anchoring my gaze downwards, avoiding the intensity of his eyes. Somehow, laying bare my uncertainty felt like exposing my most guarded wounds. It's not the time." "Then let me help you," he said softly, stepping closer, gently brushing my arm as if needing that single connection to be reminded of our shared past. But a whirlpool of conflicting emotions surged within me. Would I allow him that access after everything we'd been through? The memory of his absence clawed at the edges of my resolve. I wanted to hate him for leaving but couldn't ignore the tender concern painted across his soft features. "I can't," I whispered, my voice trembling. "I can't let you help me with this, not now." The weight of it all constricted my chest, my breath shallow, each inhale a battle against the tidal wave of possibility crashing around us. Dr. Lindell stood by, patient yet ready. I could feel his presence pulling me back from the brink, a reminder that my mother's condition demanded responsibility far beyond my emotional turmoil. "I'm here when you're ready to talk," he said quietly, almost a promise, as he took a step back to grant us space but remained close enough to feel tethered to the realities we faced. Hesitating, I allowed my eyes to drift back to my mother. She lay nestled in her hospital bed, oxygen hissing softly, her frail figure a stark contrast to the memories I held of the vibrant woman she used to be. I wished fervently for her to look at me, to reassure me that whatever storm rumbled through our lives could be weathered together. "I can feel you drifting, my love." Her voice was a faint whisper, barely loud enough to break through the frenetic noise in my mind. "Mom." I leaned forward, pressing my forehead against the cool edge of the bed, tears slipping silently down as I clenched my eyes shut, trying to block out the chaos. "I'm here. I need you to be strong," she murmured, her breath shaky. "But strength doesn't always mean keeping everything to yourself. You deserve better than what's happened." I swallowed hard, feeling the weight of her words settle deep within me. She was right, yet how could I allow others in when my own heart seemed incapable of healing? The warmth of the moments we'd shared was now overshadowed by the chill of what lay ahead. Suddenly, my phone buzzed again. This time, a larger community group text alert. I steeled myself, recalling snippets of the previous messages. Could it be the fallout from my mother's condition? Was there something about her past I had never known that could change the course of everything? As I opened the message, my breath caught. "We're all with her. We love her. Here's the fundraiser to support her upcoming needs." Tears filled my eyes again. This wasn't simply news of her condition but an invitation to witness the bonds woven in her life outside of mine. It felt like an embrace, but also like a knife twisting deep inside me. "Douc?" My husband whispered, voices low, teasing a thin thread of hope as he peered over my shoulder at the screen. I caught a glimpse of his sincerity again. "Your mom's loved. It's not just us. Look how many people care." "Stop," I snapped, this time more vehemently as raw emotions twisted into anger and resentment, mingled with heartbreak. "You left me to handle this alone. You're not part of that anymore." He recoiled slightly, eyes wide with hurt, but there was something deeper lurking therein, understanding that perhaps he never could grasp until now. "Is that what you really want?" He dared, and the challenge in his tone knocked the breath from my lungs. I should have known better than to let it gush out, but the tears flowed liberally. The world beyond those hospital walls seemed so distant, yet now it felt like an impending avalanche, ready to bury us. And just as I closed my eyes, attempting to stave off the emotions on the brink of life's crossroads, my mother spoke again, her voice low yet commanding. "You have to choose who to trust. Life's too short for ghosts." With those words, the phone slipped from my grip, the sound shattering as it met the ground, my thoughts racing ahead to an unseen future. Trust. Ghosts. Secrets were vying for attention, swirling just beneath the surface, choking the air from my lungs again. As the room quieted, a thought took root. Maybe the community outreach was a life-linear way of uncovering the hidden chapters of my mother's life, offering both answers and unexpected truths, not just about her, but about healing. And as I unspooled my thoughts, a final, jarring notification arrived. It flashed ominously a name I hadn't seen in years. Suddenly, the hospital walls felt like they were closing in. Secrets loomed, and I was not ready for what awaited me beyond the truth. Shakily, I gathered my thoughts, knowing the answers were as intricate as the wounds that still bled from our broken lives. Life was sweeping me to a new horizon, one shrouded in fog but marked with the hope of belated reunions. Yet my heart clenched with uncertainty as I wondered if we were truly ready to face it. The past was a phantom haunting our every step, waiting to daringly reveal itself when we least expected it. The hospital room was too still, the kind of stillness that amplifies whispered fears and regrets. One familiar face could not dissipate the looming shadows of despair hanging above us. I caught my breath, trying to wrap my mind around the swirling confusion, the tender care amidst the unearthing chaos. The name that flashed across my phone was a ghost from my past, a specter of old wounds that still had the power to press down on my battered heart. Mom's words echoed in the recesses of my mind, urging me to trust, to let go of the burden of solitude and pain. But trust felt like a fragile, sticky substance, too easily broken and too hard to repair. I couldn't help but wonder how far this community effort would reach and how deep the ties extended. My fears intermingled with a clamoring hope for connection, igniting something buried inside me I hadn't known existed. Who was it? My husband's question pulled me back from the edge of my spiraling thoughts. His voice was filled with an urgency that pushed against the barrier I had constructed between us. Seeing him so close, feeling the warmth radiating from his body, made me acutely aware of the distance I kept and the pain it demanded. I felt the weight of his gaze, asking for honesty while knowing the answer would ignite a conflict I wasn't sure I could withstand. It was I hesitated, the name caught in my throat, a testament to an unwillingness to face the past, let alone lay it bare before him. It was my father. The admission lingered in the air, a declaration that not only revealed my internal struggle but opened the floodgates to a cascade of unresolved issues. Why now? He pressed. After all this time, I shook my head, overwhelmed by the emotions crowding within me. I don't know. He hasn't been part of my life for so long. After everything, my voice faltered, choked with the memories of betrayal and loss. Has a ghost. A reminder of everything I've tried to escape. Are you willing to face it? He ventured delicately, a hint of hesitance threading through his words. Does it matter to you? The question hung tangibly in the air, echoing like the beats of my heart. Did it matter? The idea of confronting my father felt like standing at the edge of a cliff, teetering precariously over a chasm filled with the unknown. I longed to jump, to discover unfamiliar territories, yet the fear of falling back into familiar darkness held me ransom. Mom's voice fluttered in again, each soft syllable a reminder of her encouragement. In that moment, it dawned on me, perhaps the fundraiser was not just about gathering support for her medical needs, but also a chance for me to reach out beyond the confines of my pain into the arms that had once cared for me. And what if Hes still the man who hurt you? My husband questioned softly, his eyes searching mine, pleading for answers they both knew I had yet to find. What if it isn't healing? What if it's just more wounds? I paused, the gravity of it sinking within me. He had been gone, a ghost too, fleeing from the shadows of our lives just as I had. Yet here he was, standing in the midst of my uncertainty, showing signs of the commitment I had almost convinced myself I didn't want anymore. It was maddeningly confusing, but perhaps it was also illuminating. I have to try, I finally whispered, resolve shifting into words. For Mom. For me. For what little hope we can still cling to. With that admission, I felt a flicker of courage, a momentary release from the choking grasp of fear. It would require facing more than just my father, it would require confronting the delicate strands of my own heart, the unhealed scars that still bled raw emotions. Yet I needed to know the longing for a connection that bound my mother and me together could be what untangled this mess. As I turned to the window, sunlight bending around the edges of the curtain, I noticed the nurse entering the room with a warm smile. Your mother is asking for you, she said gently, a hint of excitement in her voice. She's more alert now. With every step, I felt the gravity of the moment swell within me. Facing my mother meant facing the truth, which was an emotional voyage beyond anything I had prepared for. Would my heart be ready to receive all that awaited? As I entered her room, the faint traces of her smile greeted me, a lighthouse against the dark storm that swirled outside the hospital walls. Glancing back, I caught my husband's gaze, filled with something akin to hope and apprehension. My heart swelled with the recognition that perhaps, just perhaps, this journey wouldn't be one I would have to navigate alone. Mom, I whispered, feeling more vulnerable than I ever had. I'm here. The tears threatened to spill again, bitterness mixing with the sweetness of raw love and longing. But as I leaned closer, intent on sharing my newfound resolve, an unexpected silence fell. The air shifted palpably, and my mother's expression morphed from quiet courage to a look of impending dread. I need to tell you something about your father, she began, her voice quavering yet heavy with the weight of unsaid truths. My heart lurched, and I felt the room start to spin. Secrets, buried deep and buried long, were suddenly clawing their way to the surface. Would I be ready for whatever revelation they held, or was my heart still too fragile for the truths waiting on the other side? The room fell into an unsettling hush, the kind that suffocates the air and leaves little room for breath. I wanted to scream, to shatter the delicate silence with the barrage of questions that lay coiled in my stomach, but I felt a different voice jab against my defenses. It was my mother's lifeline, yet an inevitable anchor pulling me back into a tumultuous sea. What about him, Mom? I pressed, willing the words to come out steady but aware they trembled like a fragile leaf caught in an autumn breeze. What do you have to say? She took a deep breath, her fingers trembling as she brushed them against the edge of the blanket, almost as if she needed some grounding against the gravity of her own revelation. The pallor of her skin showed more than just exhaustion, it was the reflection of her own buried pains, resurfacing at last like the tide washing ashore secrets beneath the waves. I've kept so much from you to protect you, she began, her throat constricted, the words appearing treacherous on her tongue. Your father left in such a rush, and I told you it was about the job to make it sound simpler. The pause that followed felt interminable, like the stillness before a thunderstorm. But he was fleeing from something much greater than mere work. He was escaping the man he had become. The revelation struck me with the force of a hammer, each word a resounding echo of decades-long silence. What do you mean? I asked, panic curling around the edges of my resolve. Is he dangerous? No, she said hastily, her eyes widening in alarm. No, it's not that, but there were things he didn't share, things I didn't want you to carry, she whispered, her voice almost breaking. Your father, he made choices that spiraled out of control. Choices you don't deserve to bear as a burden. I thought if I kept them buried, they wouldn't infect our lives any longer. As I processed her words, a storm brewed within me. Did this mean that my father's absence was rooted in his own fear and regret? Or was it an act of selfishness that left scars running deeper than the ones we had already collected? I wanted to retreat, to scoff and dismiss it, to insist I did not want to hear it. And yet, paradoxically, I was drawn closer, craving clarity and connection. Then why now? I challenged gently, the absurdity of everything swirling through my mind. Why is he reaching out when you made it seem so clear that he wanted nothing to do with me? With us, my mother raised her gaze, those oceanic depths of her sorrow meeting mine with a mixture of regret and determination. Because I can't keep my silence any longer. Not when accepting the past is the only way to break free from its chains. And perhaps it's time for you to learn who he truly is. My stomach spiraled in both dread and curiosity. But what if I find out I don't like him? What if I regret ever reaching out? You're strong enough to handle whatever truth comes. Her voice was resolute, a fragile ember of conviction amid the ashes. You deserve to seek the answers that have eluded you all this time. And you deserve a chance for healing. Tears pricked at the corners of my eyes as her essence wrapped around me like a fragile embrace, drawing me back to memories of comfort forgotten amidst the chaos. I wished for just a whisper of the lightness I had felt during our cherished moments, the laughter bonding us as mother and daughter. Just then, the door swung open, and a nurse stepped in, her smile instantly brightening the somber atmosphere. Sorry to intrude. I thought you'd like to know we've gotten a positive update. Your mom is stable and recuperating well. She gestured enthusiastically to the clipboard in her hand, sharing information on assets in the simplest of terms. But I could barely focus on her words, the nurse a distant echo in the cacophony of my thoughts. What awaited me behind the veil of my father's absence was a mystery deeper than I anticipated. Another dynamic was summoned as the nurse looked between us, sensing a weight in the room, urging for levity. And there's more. A lovely group of people has signed up to bring flowers. Later this afternoon, though part of me longed to cling to this moment, I felt it was merely a bandage over wounds yet to be exposed. With heartfelt gratitude, I thanked the nurse as she left, focusing back on my mother. Mom, what if I discover that he truly is a monster? Before she could answer, the clamor of the door echoed behind her again, forcing my attention to shift once more. This time, in walked a man, his confident stride and weathered features leaving no doubt in my mind. I froze, recognition rippling through me like an electric charge. The semblance of familiarity in his presence shattered my fleeting hope. This was my father, unmistakably him. I hadn't imagined the moment would arrive quite like this, my heart pounding in trepidation, clashing against the walls I had meticulously built. "You're here," I managed to utter, surprise intermingling with a tremor of disbelief, as he stood at the threshold of our fractured past. For what felt like an eternity, we locked eyes. Me questions hung unspoken between us, heavy with the significance of lost time. Then, finally, he took a step closer, the weight of my history resurfacing in every painful breath, a confrontation about to unfold. The revelation of confrontation loomed, spiraling breathlessly as anticipation coiled within me. There would be no turning back. The silence that settled in the hospital room was stifling as the reality of my father's presence overwhelmed every other thought. I could feel the shifting tides of emotion washing over my fear, anger, a surge of questions colliding like waves against jagged rocks, threatening to drown me in uncertainty. "Why are you here?" I finally demanded, the sharpness of my voice surprising even me. It was though I wanted to anchor myself in the anger that had sustained me for years, a bitter armor against the pain of abandonment. His expression shifted, a flicker of vulnerability crossing his features as he opened his mouth to respond, but my mother intervened, breaking the tension that throbbed through the air. "Can we please start this with some compassion? We've all been through so much," she said, her voice shaky yet pleading. He nodded slowly, and as he did, I noticed the trace lines etched around his eyes, the weariness that told me he had not been untouched by time or consequence. "I came to see you, both of you," he finally said. "I've spent too long running away from what I did, from the lives I left behind. And now you want to make amends?" I shot back, the bitterness spilling over before I could catch it. "Is that it? After 3 years of silence?" "No," he blurted, defensive yet earnest. "It's not that simple. I know that I don't deserve your forgiveness, but that isn't why I'm here. I saw your mother's condition and realized that I could finally face you. I need you to know the truth why I had to leave." An unyielding weight settled in my chest. No matter how angry I was, I craved answers. The words swirled through my mind like smoke, elusive and tantalizing, igniting a flicker of hope that perhaps clarity would bring some form of peace to our fractured family. My curiosity wrestled against my resentment, struggling to find a way through the chaos. "I don't want to hear your excuses," I murmured, shaky and unsure. "Just tell me what you mean. How could you just walk away from us?" He drew a deep breath, his gaze dropping as if he were searching for the right words among the fragments of his past. I was ashamed, and terrified. There were aspects of my life decisions that I made that put everyone I loved in danger. I thought distancing myself from you would keep you safe. My heart twisted at his words, understanding the paradox underlying them. Yet, how could he know that running away only seemed to deepen the peril, leave us vulnerable? "So what? You thought that ignoring us would protect us? That's no excuse for abandoning your family." Before he could respond, a soft knock at the door drew my attention away. A nurse entered, bringing with her an unexpected infusion of warmth. "Sorry again for barging in, but it looks like there are a few friends and family outside, eager to share some love," she chirped. "Love," I repeated in a murmur, almost bitterly. The word rang hollow as I turned back to my father, his gaze caught between excitement and trepidation. "You don't get to call it love after the absence. You walked away. Please, let me show you that I care," he pleaded, desperation mixing with sincerity. "Let me share my truth, and maybe you can understand. I want to fix this. I want to be part of your lives again." At that moment, I could feel my heart wavering. Was it truly possible to rebuild what had been shattered? What did forgiveness even look like when the foundation of trust had crumbled beneath us? But just as I prepared another rebuttal, the sound of a familiar voice crescendoed from the hallway, breaking through my turbulent thoughts. "Is anyone in there?" I recognized it immediately. Megan, my closest friend, who had been my rock through the storm. The door swung open with an excited push, and she peeked in, her genuine smile faltering the moment she registered the tension that hung heavy in the air. With her entrance, a new thread of confusion tangled the spotlight on the room, and I realized that the moment had taken a different turn without my consent. "Megan, wait," I stammered, caught between the unfolding destruction of my past and the flicker of hope embodied by her presence. I glanced between the two men who framed my life, my father seeking redemption and my friend yearning to pull me back from the edge. "I didn't know you would be here," she said, eyes darting between us, sensing the storm. Her innocent questioning offered a much-needed distraction. As I tried to respond, a sudden rush of voices and laughter erupted outside the room, a group gathering like a torrent, and before I could register the reason there was the sharp sound of crashing glass. The chaos shattered the moment again, a cacophony spilling into the calm. I turned to see the group of friends and well-wishers who had come to visit my mother, and in the midst of them, another flash of recognition struck. The man, who closely resembled my father but was younger, stood freezing at the threshold, eyes wide, igniting an entirely new wave of questions rolling toward me. "Is that?" my voice faltered, the tension gripping my chest firmly as realization seeped in. "Who are you?" I asked, the question wrapping around the edges of doubt and disbelief. "I'm your brother," he managed, the whisper of truth that could either become a bridge or a chasm between us. The words hung in the air like the heavy scent of rain before a storm, each syllable a crack of thunder reverberating through the fragile threads of my family's narrative. I felt reality twisting, wrapping itself around me tighter, constricting my breath until I was too afraid to speak. A brother. It felt impossible, alien, like a disjointed scene torn from a novel with incongruent characters that I never expected to encounter. "My brother?" I breathed, doubt threading into my voice. "You don't understand." The young man looked almost painfully vulnerable, standing at the threshold of the room, and yet there was a strange comfort in his resemblance to our father, soft brown eyes and an angular jaw that seemed to echo in the shifting history between us. He took a tentative step forward, the hesitance in his movement reflecting the uncertainty that pulsed in my veins. "My name is Lucas," he stuttered, and I caught a hint of an accent that felt foreign, almost as if he belonged to another life entirely, the life where I had a brother and perhaps a different fate. "I know this is overwhelming. I'm sorry for showing up like this, but I heard well, I was told you were here, and I had to be here." My father remained quiet, his face a mask of tension. I could feel the tumultuous waves of emotions crashing between the three of us, each of us bearing the weight of a shared past that had never been acknowledged. I turned my gaze to Megan, who stood rooted beside me, eyes wide with shock at the unfolding familial chaos. "What's going on?" she stammered, reaching out, her supportive grip grounding me even as the storm brewed within. Did you know about this?" I shook my head, still grappling with the nuances surging around me. "How could I?" I whispered, my own voice barely recognizable. "Dad just showed up after 3 years of silence and now this. It's a long story," Lucas spoke, his voice soft but tinged with urgency, "but I can explain everything." "Please, just let me everything," I interjected, my anger spilling out like an uncontrolled flame. "How could you expect that I'd want to hear what you have to say when everything I valued shattered the moment I found out about you?" "I didn't ask to be here," he shot back, frustration mingling with sadness. "I didn't ask to be born into this mess, but I exist because of you." The conversation spiraled out of control, emotions flying thick as arrows that sailed through the room, each piercing deeper than the last. "Right, because it's my fault you're here," I spat, feeling the familiar venom of anger building. "Enough," my father suddenly roared, silencing our exchange like a sudden storm. It was a voice I barely recognized, and in that moment, it demanded silence not just for us, but for the truths many generations needed to hear. "We won't resolve any of this through fighting," yet even in his voice, I sensed layers of unkempt sorrow, father burdened by regret. It made me want to retreat further into myself, to distance further from the familial ties that had led me to this moment of crisis. Lucas' presence felt threatening, an unwelcome revelation that twisted my heart into knots. "I need to say something," my father continued, his breathing uneven as he faced each of us. "I'm sorry for everything. I can't change the past, but I want to help. I want my children to know each other, and to want a chance to be a better father to both of you." As agonizing as it was to hear his plea, it coursed through me like an unsettling warmth. Buried underneath the denial, the betrayal, and mixed grief, there lay a glimmer of involuntary empathy, a flickering hope waiting for the chance to ignite. "I need time," I managed, wrestling to find my own sanity amid the chaos. "More than anything, I don't know if I can accept this. Not today. The sincerity in his gaze bore down on me, and I recognized that flicker of hope mirrored in Lucas' uncertainty. Somehow in the midst of the storm swirled around this hospital room, I was battling the possibility of connection. Suddenly, an alarm rang throughout the hall, piercing the fragile moment like a bolt of lightning. My mother's heart rate had plummeted, sending nurses rushing into her room just beyond the door, urgency eclipsing everything else. Panic seized me. "Mom!" I cried, darting toward the entrance where chaos erupted behind the nurses as shouts mixed with the startling sounds of machinery beeping erratically. In the blink of an eye, we were engulfed by a sea of medical professionals. I turned back, my heart pounding, desperate for solace or just a moment to tether myself. "I need you both," I called back to Lucas and my father, fear propelling my voice. "I don't know what is happening, but I need more than just answers. I need family." Lucas' expression softened as he caught my gaze, and for a heartbeat, I found a connection to this strange unbreakable pull of brotherhood. Side by side with him and our father, we were thrust into the unknown, tethered by our shared concern, yet standing under a cloud of unresolved questions. Together, we stepped into the tempest, hand in hand, uncertain of what tomorrow held, but fearing what truths might surface next. As I walked into the storm, my heartbeat echoed, drowning out everything else until a voice called from the depths of the chaos, a voice I could no longer ignore. "Is someone in there?" The sharp call sounded like a verdict, igniting a deeper fear within me. For in the uncertainty of the hospital, I wondered, what came next might change us forever. The chaos enveloped us, a whirlwind of nurses and doctors bursting into the room as sirens blared in the distance, desperation painting the air in frantic strokes. My heart raced, pounding in synchronicity with the sirens, but what echoed louder was the fear creeping into the very recesses of my mind, the fear of losing my mother, the very anchor of my life. I felt Lucas and my father step closer to me, forming a circle of support that seemed impossibly fragile given the gravity of the situation. "Stay back, please," a nurse shouted as she ushered us outside into the sterile hallway, their clinical faces determined yet unyielding in the face of our mounting dread. The seriousness in their eyes confirmed what none of us wanted to admit: we were caught in a tempest of uncertainties, battling against the tide of potential loss. I turned to look back at the commotion, the medics frantically working over my mother, their movements precise yet tinged with urgency as they navigated the delicate machinery monitoring her every heartbeat. What came next felt like suspended time. Moments blended into a blur, each second stretching infinitely as we stood there, shoulder to shoulder, bound by the unspoken bond that had suddenly taken root in the most unfathomable of circumstances. The weight of it hung heavily in the air, for as much as I wanted to stay focused on the turmoil in the hospital room, my mind couldn't resist the urge to drift back to the conversation, that unfamiliar brother who had stepped into my world uninvited and shattered all that I thought I knew. "Are you even real?" I whispered, the question spilling out into the heavy silence surrounding us like broken glass. The overwhelming emotions surged within me: pain, resentment, a flicker of hope, and terror, all tangled within my chest, creating an unsettling ache that demanded to be released. My father glanced at Lucas, his gaze a blend of confusion and recognition, as if caught between reliving the past and forging the future. "I didn't expect this either," Lucas said, his voice soft yet firm, like the calm before a storm. "But I'm here to change things, to be part of your life, too." I shivered at the honesty woven through his words, a refreshing, unexpected twist amidst so much chaos. Time stretched like molasses, and finally, after what felt like hours, the door opened. A doctor emerged, her expression unreadable, but the air around her thrummed with tension and trepidation. "Family?" she queried, glancing around at us expectantly. I felt my stomach churn, the anticipation curling like a vice around my chest as we stepped closer. Dr. Rowe. Your mother's condition has stabilized, but we need to discuss treatment options." "What does that mean?" I managed to choke out, searching her eyes for reassurance, for some glimmer of truth that everything would be okay. "Is she going to be all right?" "Your mother is a fighter," Dr. Rowe affirmed, her tone crisp and reassuring. "But we need to act swiftly. There will be options to consider, some more invasive than others. We're going to do our best for her." The words brought a wave of relief crashing over me, the weight lifting ever so slightly as hope mingled with fear. Yet even in the midst of relief, I couldn't shake the looming presence of unresolved pain. My gaze flicked to Lucas, then to my father. The questions still simmered beneath the surface questions of our past, of forgiveness, the need to piece together the shattered fragments of our lives. I recalled my mother's words, reminding me of the strength in using our voices to share our truths. "Can we all talk?" I finally asked, the words tentatively spilling from my lips like a timid blossom in early spring. "We need to understand what this all means." "You're absolutely right," my father replied, a hint of gratitude lacing his voice as if he was surprised at my willingness to engage. "Whatever happens from here on out, we need to face it together." As we moved into a private room designated for conversations, I felt an unsettling blend of fear and resolve within me. This was the beginning of something new, but the jagged edges of our shared history loomed ominously, reminders of the wounds that had not yet healed. Lucas took a seat across from me, his eyes glistening with unspoken emotion. "I know this is all too much, and I don't want to push you," he began, sincere and earnest, "but I thought it was important for you to know you're not alone in this. People care, and they want to support you." I could feel my father's gaze burn into me, and I steadied my breath. "How can you sit there and say that?" I challenged. "You don't even know me, yet I do know you," he interrupted gently, his eyes softening. "I may have been absent, but I've carried your memory with me everywhere. I regret every day spent away from you. I truly wanted to be there." The fresh ache in my chest stirred, and I struggled against the pull of empathy, knowing how easily it could give way to weakness. I wrestled with the flicker of understanding for a man I had barely known. In this moment, I realized Lucas, too, was caught in a chaos he hadn't asked for. You don't owe me anything," I murmured, still tethered to the memories of loss and the rage that had once filled those moments of silence. "I know," Lucas replied earnestly, searching my eyes for connection. "But I want you to know that I'm here because I want to understand. Because I want to know my sister." It pierced through me with a tide of displacement, the longing for familial connection bubbling to the surface. Would it be possible to untangle this knot of emotional pain? Could we figure out who we were meant to be to each other? A moment of stillness filled the air before my father spoke again, his voice weighted with quiet sincerity. "I am here to make amends, to share my truth and hopefully give you both an understanding of the man I was, and the man I want to be moving forward." But as the confession hovered between us like the calm before a storm, I felt a rush of emotions flood through me: the fear of exposure, the raw need for assurance, and the relentless desire for healing. The past had carved its presence into my heart for far too long, and perhaps this was a step, however daunting, toward reconciliation. "I don't know what's next," I confessed, swallowing around the lump in my throat. "I don't even know if I'm ready for this." What I had thought was a typical family confrontation now felt like an awakening, tremors of change rippling through each of us. The walls I had put up started to tremble, and beneath that, a seed of hope whispered to me this shared struggle would lead to something more profound. As we began to unpack the layers of misunderstanding, I felt myself casting aside shards of bitterness and resentment, not with erasure but with understanding, the kind of understanding that would take time but promised to mold us as a family once again. The healing would not happen overnight, but it was the potential that sparked within me that sent rejuvenation coursing through my veins. So, as we began to delve into our histories and navigate the emotional landscape waiting for us on the other side, I held tightly to the tender connection forming among us, and the reminder my mother had given: healing came from allowing trust and honesty to flourish, even in the face of bruising vulnerability. And with that resolve, the dawn of a new chapter finally began to unfold. Sometimes, the most beautiful transformations arise from the darkest moments, when the echoes of our past finally converge in a hum of acceptance, and the strength we never knew we possessed lights the path ahead. Together, I could finally see how we might break the chains of the past, step into the light, and begin the journey of becoming who we were always meant to be, as a family. For love, once buried beneath layers of grief, had the power to blossom anew. Today marked not just the beginning of healing for my mother, but a chance to mend a fractured past and create a future intertwined with hope and resilience. And as I grasped the hands of my newfound family, I finally understood that acceptance would always begin with honest unwavering commitment to bridging the chasms that had long divided us. In that subtle, yet powerful realization, I knew this was not just a journey of forgiveness but of uncovering the layers of connection that coursed through generations. The path stretched ahead, filled with challenges but undeniably illuminated by the love we sought to forge anew. Our family was finally coming together, born out of shadows, growing stronger in the light, an unbroken line of hope stretching toward the horizon.